KYOTO ビデオ
When I started this video project that we now know as KYOTO Video, I had a mission in mind. That mission was to not just highlight the old, weird anime of the past, but to maintain a record of once popular anime that has now disappeared among the sands of time. It's something that I feel like is a complete necessity. With how much anime gets released in a single year these days, it's almost impossible for anime that was released 5 years ago to maintain a grip in the popular zeitgeist, let alone anime that was released 15 years ago. Case in point, most anime fans have completely forgotten that 25 years ago, anime was completely dominated by the genre of fantasy. I've mentioned this in past videos, but it bears repeating that straight up Dungeons & Dragons fantasy anime were huge in the 90s. When talking about this moment in anime history, I have given a disproportionate amount of time to the anime series Slayers, both because it is one of my all-time favorite anime franchises, but it also kind of remains the most well-known anime that emerged in that boom.
Koala.
But it is still a single thread in the tapestry of glorious 90s sword and sorcery anime, and American distribution companies knew this. Following the success of Central Park Media licensing Slayers, other companies were quick to jump on that bandwagon and begin licensing other similar fantasy anime to bring over to the States. Like Slayers, a lot of these anime were huge hits within the anime fandom, but unlike Slayers, they never seemed to maintain the same longevity. And that's still a charitable description given how the size of Slayers' current fandom is a far cry from where it was 20 years ago. Today's subject is one of those anime that rode the fantasy boom into success before getting almost completely memory holed by Father Time. And judging from its plot synopsis, it kinda makes that fact all the more unbelievable.
The Spooner Continent, a land ruled by magic. A world where a handful of warlocks, wizards, and witches hold complete dominion over mankind. Here a magician's slightest whim is law, for no mere human can hope to stand against their black sorcery. And yet the people do have one great hope, for there exists a secret band of heroes whose duty is to challenge these evil magic users and bring them to justice. They are known as the Sorcerer Hunters.
On the continent of Spooner, society is divided up into two classes: simple ordinary people called parsoners, and powerful magic users called sorcerers. Marked by triangles on their foreheads, sorcerers are often gifted positions of nobility as a means to pacify them and keep them out of trouble. Unfortunately, it also gives them carte blanche to exploit, torture, and enslave the populace of non-magic users that they rule over. The Stella Church, under the command of the powerful Holy Mage, I'm not kidding with her name here, Big Mama, has formed a regulatory body of 5 warriors to hunt down sorcerers who have abused their power using forbidden magic. They are known simply as the Sorcerer Hunters. They consist of macho and muscular martial artist Gato Mocha,
You're going down, you monster!
the beautiful and exceptionally polite conjurer Marin Glace,
But what's he up to, Marin?
I don't know, but we've got to catch him before he uses his magic again. Before he does something horrible.
the shy, docile, and very modest Tiramisu,
You have used that which has been forbidden. You have ruined the lives of hundreds of innocent people through your pursuit of unworthy goals, and now you shall pay for your crime!
Tira's more high-strung and sexually forward sister Chocola,
It's all right, Tira. Didn't you know that my darling Carrot and your adorable sister are secretly engaged?
Engaged? And just who decided this?
and the self-proclaimed leader of the squadron and Marin's older brother, Carrot, who's a perverted idiot.
You dirty old man!
Huh? Dirty old man? I'm not a dirty old man, I'm a dirty young man. So, why are you walking out here all alone in the rain? Do you want me to be your date?
Through Big Mama's assistant Dada, oh that hurts. The Sorcerer Hunters track down and destroy any and all magic users using their special powers, such as Tira and Chocola having the ability to turn into superpowered and scantily clad dominatrices, with the ability to whip and razor wire their enemies to death.
You've been a naughty boy, darling!
And now it's time for us to teach you some discipline.
Or Carrot having the ability to absorb any magical spell to turn him into a giant demon of destruction, and can only be brought back under control by Tira and Chocola whipping and dominating him back to normal. If you haven't guessed by now, this is a very strange anime.
Don't call me that, you know! Call me a queen!
There's something about Sorcerer Hunters that I find really fascinating, and for the life of me, I can't put into words why that is. It's one of the many examples of high-concept, out-there 90s anime that really entrenched itself into the North American anime fandom at the turn of the millennium, it being one of the big hits ADV had in the wake of their success on Evangelion. People were attracted to an anime that could balance exciting sword and sorcery fantasy with a complete batshit premise befitting the medium it occupied. And through that attraction came a deluge of fan art, slashfic, and cosplay that would not be allowed in most dealers' rooms today. But the fandom just seemed to up and vanish one day, taking with it tons of unfinished Marin Gato fics, and causing the demand for boob tape to lower ever so slightly. The most recent thing I've heard of it in the wild was all the way back in the early 10s where it was fodder for anime critics on Blip TV. And that's far too long to go without revisiting this peculiarity of anime past, especially since Discotek has a Blu-ray out. So we're here to ask two questions. What makes Sorcerer Hunters so special, and is it any good? Like many fantasy anime of its ilk, Sorcerer Hunters began as a light novel series, it being one of the many works conceived in that period by writer Satoru Akahori. If you've ever heard of a wacky, high-concept fantasy anime that was released between the mid-90s and the turn of the millennium, chances are Akahori was the brain behind the madness. Titles such as Saber Marionette J, Maze the Megaburst Space, and Moncoli Knights being attached to his creative resume. But as was fairly typical in those days, released alongside the light novel series was an accompanying manga, and that is where Sorcerer Hunters really found its audience. It could have either been the engaging storyline where they balanced epic fantasy with goofy comedy, or it could have been the gorgeous art of Akahori's illustrator, Rei Omishi, who really had a knack for drawing the principal female cast as saucy as they wanna be. In any case, the manga was a hit in the monthly shonen magazine Dengeki Comic Gao, an anthology that specialized in being a more peppery alternative to other shonen mags. An anime was bound to happen, and in the autumn of 1995, it would end up premiering on TV Tokyo. But the studio heading up the adaptation would not be a seasoned workhorse, but a relative newcomer to the field, Studio Xebec. Founded just that year in the month of May by former Tatsunoko staffers, Xebec was a subsidiary of Production IG. So while they weren't exactly the scrappy up-and-comer with those kinds of resources at their disposal, Xebec's work on Sorcerer Hunters was successful enough that it would signal them becoming one of the dominant animation studios of the late 90s to mid-2000s, being behind anime like March successor Nadesco, Love Hina, Shaman King, and the Zoids franchise. Tragically, the studio ended up being hit by a lot of high-profile bombs by the 2010s. Come 2019, Xebec would be sold to Sunrise, who would then absorb them for their nutrients, leaving nothing behind. But, in spite of this being their first project, Xebec really was able to make a surprisingly well-animated TV anime. Okay, as well-animated as a mid-tier TV anime conceived in the middle of a recession can be, but well-animated nonetheless. Being staffed by mostly Tatsunoko vets does allow the opportunity to execute both well-animated action scenes and well-boarded comedic scenes, especially when everything is under the watchful eye and guiding hand of legendary director Koichi Mashimo. And there sure are many great climactic scenes animated by the likes of Tokuyuki Matsutake and Shinsaku Kozumi, whose character animation in episode 3 looks to be made specifically to allow him to show off. But check this out, even in the moments where the characters are just talking, characters can be given full smooth character animations. It doesn't happen often, but the fact that it is there is impressive in and of itself. But the strongest point to me in Sorcerer Hunter's favor is the character designs. They are just those vintage 90s character designs that fill me with joy. And they should, because they are the products of character designer KYOTO. Goto's style is super angular yet personable. The girls have big spiky hair that maintains some leftover 80s floof, and they are given eyes that are perfectly round shimmering pools that are highlighted by eyeliner that could cut through steel. This style of character design is definitely best shown in Chocola, but my favorite character design of this anime has to go to Tira. It is a 1-2 combo of my favorite old school design tropes. Floofy hair and those thick opaque round glasses that were everywhere in the 90s. Seriously, anime should bring those glasses back. They rock. Of course, since KYOTO is also known for his pinup work, you can kinda tell he had a good time drawing Tira and Chocola's powered up forms. Though it should be noted that broadcast standards dictated that both ladies had to cover up some skin. Considering Chocola's getup in the manga, this isn't too surprising. But even with the censorship and extremely sarcastic air quotes, you can tell KYOTO had his fun. The sub versus dub situation for Sorcerer Hunters is kind of strange because I don't really think one is exactly better than the other. The original has a well-balanced cast consisting of players like Sakiko Tamigawa playing the energetically sweet Dota,
なんかすごい伝説ですけど、本当なんですか？まさか。あらら。
Mitsuaki Madono playing the cool as a cucumber Marin,
すいません。別に邪魔するつもりはなかったんですが、草笛の音に惹かれまして。草笛？私の？ええ。悲しいけれど清らかな旋律。
and veteran Sumi Shimamoto playing the gentle yet authoritative MILF Big Mama.
神は細部に宿りたもん。
は？
聖なるもの、愚かなるもの、真実の愛、心の痛で。
Though the standouts to me are Chocola's and Tira's seiyus respectively, because not only do both of them have to play their characters, but also their characters in a convincingly steamy way. Yuko Mizutani as Chocola does a great job in presenting herself as the more forward of the sisters, and really knows how to roll those darlings off the tongue like nobody's business.
ごめんなさい、キャロ。
でも全てはダーリンのため。ダーリンは私以外の女の人を愛すると不幸になるのよ。
それには異議を唱えますが。え？
The voice of Tira is Megumi Hayashibara, because this is a 90s anime, and it's roles like these that prove why Hayashibara was such a hot commodity in this decade. Her ability to convincingly go from the sweetest little cinnamon roll in the world to "your son also calls me mommy" in a matter of seconds is something not everyone can do.
でも安心です、お姉様。この町でチャーミングな女の子がいるのはここだけですわ。
ゆっくりお仕置きしてあげる。
And yet, when I watched this in the original Japanese for the first time, it was a struggle, because there was one voice that made it really hard to watch in any other way but small doses. Let me preface this by saying that I don't hold anything personal against Shinosuke Furumoto as a person. I'm sure he's a nice guy, and I have seen him do good voice work in other roles, but his portrayal of Carrot is like a dentist drill going right through my temple. He performs with a perfect cadence and voice inflection to just piss me off. His vocal mugging is a poor man's Yasuo Yamada robbed of any charisma or voice control. Just awful. My issues with Carrot as a character extend beyond his voice, and believe me, we'll get to those. But Furumoto's voice certainly didn't help. As for the English dub, I kinda ended up preferring it more. It had that patented rough charm that all ADV dubs had in this era. I personally like it, but I totally understand if it's not other people's cup of tea, because I will admit there are some weird direction decisions like Tamara Lowe making Tira sound way too much like a tomboy.
Well, he said he was going to go out for a walk to think about some things.
My darling, thinking? That smells fishy.
Uh-huh. Very.
But I do have some favorite performances here, like my girl Tiffany Grant as Chocola. She is a natural in playing a very sweet tease in her default form.
For some excitement, darling? Well, why didn't you say so? Ah!
And boy does she transition nicely over to her work mode with that velvety purr.
I'm the only one who can wear heels like that and grind them into my darling's spine.
And I gotta give a hearty round of applause to Brett Weaver for doing the impossible task of making Carrot actually tolerable.
You one-armed bandit, give it back!
I'm sorry, sir, but I must ask you to stop playing.
Idiot! I'm not playing here! No way! I'm losing my life savings! But as long as you're here, can I borrow some more money?
Weaver is one of those unsung English dub talents who specializes in characters with loud, boisterous personalities, but he always gives them a performance that makes them feel human in a way, probably thanks to his strong ability to improv.
Oh, the It's gonna leave a mark!
Plus, I like the fact that Weaver's baritone makes Carrot sound like more of your average doofus than the complete infantilized man baby that Furumoto's performance made him out to be. And we also have the slate of ADV regulars playing one-off roles throughout the anime as well, and they all do a good job. It's a solid localization job, however, I do have one little nitpick. Like most of their localizations, this one was headed up by Matt Greenfield. But because Sorcerer Hunters was being localized where ADV was getting a lot of titles floated their way, Greenfield ended up having to leave the project after episode 14 to focus on other projects that had a higher priority. As far as I recall, Matt had to refocus his attention onto other projects. Now this is well over 20 years ago, so I can't remember what exactly, but I do know he was producing, writing, and directing several projects at once. I've always felt the second half, Spell Wars, would have been better if Matt had been able to stay on and finish directing it. So from episode 15 onward, Sorcerer Hunters got the localization rebrand of Spell Wars Sorcerer Hunters Revenge, and localization and ADR direction was handed over to a newcomer named Stephen Foster. Now, I have some complaints about how Foster does his localizing and direction, so much so that I'm not going to bog you down with the details in this video, but one of the issues I've always had with him is that he is known to take huge liberties with the script. He doesn't punch up the script like a good localizer, but instead rewrites the meaning of entire scenes to suit his idea of humor. This problem is not as present in Sorcerer Hunters when compared to his other works, but you begin to notice some of Foster's fingerprints when the humor of the anime starts becoming way crasser and more mean-spirited than it was in the previous 14 episodes. For example, there's an episode where Carrot is committed to a hospital with a hot doctor and her hot nurse assistant, and after an episode of him screwing around and trying to get into their respective pants for 20 minutes, the punchline is revealed that the two medical professionals are eccentric doctors who cure diseases through unnecessary surgery. Foster changes this so that the doctor and the nurse are actually a couple of man-hating mad women who are implied to be in a lesbian relationship and just kidnap and torture men for kicks.
Yep, that's right, those two bitches are like some bitter chicks who hate all men, so they use the hospital as a setup to torture all men because they believe that all men should be punished.
That, friends and pals, is just a taste of Foster foibles. So in the end, whether or not you choose sub or dub, be warned that each choices have one potential deal breaker. All things considered, what I like about Sorcerer Hunters the most is just the core concept. The plot of a party of adventurers going out into the world on a quest to defeat an evil overlord was the standard fantasy adventure story for these kinds of anime, the default. So the hook for Sorcerer Hunters is to take a look at that and go, hey, what if that was just these adventurers' day job? The result is an evil overlord of the week format, and they get quite a lot of mileage out of it. They start off with a simple guy kidnapping women from the village to summon a demon archetype, and go from there with some really out there villains, such as evil sorceress using her soul-draining flowers to create an army of mindless subservient himbos to wait on her beck and call, or rich girl dominatrix who lures men to her mansion where she can turn them into statues, or even clownish mad scientist who turns innocent people into little children and tortures them to death in his haunted maze. But not all the sorcerers are that pure cackling evil. The anime also takes the time to really explore sorcerers with sympathetic backstories. One of the best episodes involves two sorcerer brothers who are using soul-taking magic in an attempt to revive their long-dead parents. One of the brothers has actually given up on the venture because he sees that it causes the victims real mental anguish, but the other has become utterly obsessed with the ritual, especially since it doesn't give the souls physical bodies.
But every time I tried to touch them, my hands passed through theirs as if in some fading dream. As if they had never existed at all. Do you know what it's like not to know a mother's touch?
It's a well-executed tragedy of just giving power to those desperate to attempt the impossible. Speaking of power, Sorcerer Hunters also touches on the idea of class when it comes to how society is divided up between those who can use magic and those who cannot. It's a system that was set up in the aftermath of a great magic war to ensure that high-powered mages aren't running amok. But it also ended up creating a clear system of haves and have-nots with zero social mobility. And even with a regulatory body like the Sorcerer Hunters attempting to keep things in line, it's made very clear that being born a non-magic user in this world sucks major ass.
Actually, by the standards of this city, this is a fairly nice house.
Are you forgetting your origins, brother dear?
You see, this is how people who don't have the ability to use magic are forced to live.
Those poor people who lived here. I wonder if they're still alive.
Sorcerer Hunters is filled with these great concepts for both a fantasy anime and a comedy anime, and yet, for a multitude of reasons, it never seems to fully come together. Let me make it clear that I like parts of Sorcerer Hunters. Parts. So when it comes to actually judging the whole anime as a whole, the whole just doesn't work for me. I could spend time talking about the little things that annoy me, like how the Spooner Continent never seems to really be this cohesive world. Like, you get really imaginative fantasy settings like a river made of pure light and a village built on the body of a dragon destined to bring forth the end of the world, and they all share that space with a town that looks like present-day Japan. Or how it can never really strike the balance between fantasy and comedy. I've heard some people call Sorcerer Hunters a parody of fantasy anime, and I have no idea where they got that idea from because it seems like they play a lot of the fantasy elements straight as an arrow. But I think the problems could just stem from the singular problem of the anime being a compromised adaptation of the manga. It's inevitable that things get changed from page to screen, and to the anime's credit, there are some good changes, like having the 5 main bands start together rather than having the series begin with only Carrot, Marin, and Tira before having Chocola and Gato join up with them later. It really helps expedite things along. But the manga is also where the balance between fantasy and comedy is better struck. It's one part sword and sorcery and one part horny farce, and that's what it shall forever be. The anime can never really commit fully to the comedy of the manga because broadcast standards, I guess, and it results in most of the main cast feeling very underutilized as comedy players. Despite having 2 cast members who dress up like leather queens in every episode, most of the cast feels very chastened. We get little of the running gag of Gato being an openly bisexual exhibitionist with a muscle fetish, and what little we do get is far too late in the series. And Chocola's running gag of her being this irascibly amorous maiden who desperately wants to jump Carrot's bones is severely underplayed after the first 3 episodes, and she just ends up sharing the Makimura role with Tira of being the one who smacks Carrot around when he's being an idiot. Speaking of...
Oh, Miss Nightingale! Wanna take my temperature?
A lot of the comedy on this series ends up falling on Carrot, and boy is it the broadest, wacky pervert shit comedy you ever did see. Tiring is an understatement.
Oh, pretty girl! Would you like to go out on a date with me, please? Look, I've got all my shots and I smell good and I'm really nice and really...
It probably wouldn't even be that bad if Carrot was a likable character, and he's really not. Carrot's shtick is that he likes girls. He is obsessed with girls. He wants to go on dates with girls. He is driven by the need to constantly seduce, chase, and overall pester every woman within a 3-mile radius, to the point that he constantly abandons his party to go chase Tail in a nearby village.
You want to go chase girls in the village!
I've got to be me!
You know that guy that was in your D&D group that one time who completely ignored the main quest just because he wanted to see if he could lay the bar wench in the starting tavern? That's your main character. But when you compare him to other legendary anime perverts like Lupin, Ryo Saiba, and Kentaro Oe, it makes Carrot look even worse. What makes those 3 great main characters is because they are also hyper-competent professionals who you like to see solve the problem of the episode in a new way. Carrot is anything but competent. He is a terrible swordsman, is physically weak, and honestly rarely seems to take his job seriously. If it wasn't for his demon lycanthropy powers being such an efficient get-out-of-jail-free card, he would be an even bigger liability than he already is, and that maybe Big Mama should have fired him a long time ago. I guess what we're supposed to see in him is that Carrot is very emotionally intelligent and can help people meet their emotional needs, but this ends up running into the problem of Carrot being inconsistently written, switching from being this empathetic, sensitive guy who just wants to make people happy to a complete tactless dunce who can't keep a lid on that id.
And mine are black.
Black? I mean, good. It's important.
And what are they shaped like, huh?
Our hero. And all of that. All of that wouldn't be nearly so bad if Carrot wasn't treated as the most important person in the story. Because he is the most important person in the story. So throughout the anime, we are given hints woven in about a mysterious big bad who has magical powers comparable to a god on his side. Zaha Torta. A former ally of Big Mama, he is searching for a terrible power that will destroy the entire world. And that power lies within Carrot because he is the reincarnation of the god of destruction. Overall, this is a rough approximation of what happens in the manga, so they do get that right. But because the anime is 26 episodes long and half of that is spent on evil overlord of the week shenanigans, a lot of the meat gets cut from the story that was already there. For one, vast swaths of the cast are completely missing from the anime. Characters like Sirius, Eclair, the Crystal Magicians, and Lord Potato Chips are completely absent, and the very important Haze Knights, Big Mama's most elite unit of Sorcerer Hunters, are reduced to the leader, Mioflu, and 3 nameless, faceless goons. Also, bravo anime for transforming pansexual non-binary flirt icon Mioflu into a completely bland exposition machine. Even with all these cuts in the story, the anime also seems to be in no real hurry to build tension to that final battle. In episode 15, when Zaha learns of Carrot's existence thanks to the latter's idiocy, it should figure that shit's about to get real from this point onward, right? No, the episode after that is the aforementioned hospital episode. But after that episode, we get 2 great episodes where the hunters take down an ancient magical fortress, and an episode where Zaha allows his power to be absorbed by another sorcerer just so he can learn that Carrot is the reincarnation of the god of destruction, and that the other 4 hunters are the reincarnation of the 4 heroes that sealed him. Things are bound to heat up, right? Well, no, because at this point the anime really starts to lose steam and doesn't even seem to be all that interested in fighting sorcerers that much anymore, and the anime becomes mostly about characters having long extended conversations about the nature of love and family. And for as much as it talks about these themes, they don't really explore those too much in depth to be noticeable, so it really just feels like episodes of slow-paced padding. Like, why does this 20-minute episode feel like an hour slow? Even when dramatic happenings are happening, like Big Mama contemplating killing Carrot to save the world, the whole thing just gets paced in such an agonizingly slow way that I could not get wrapped up in any of the drama. Okay, so now we're at the final battle. But before we go into that, let's see how the final battle played out in the manga. The finale of the Sorcerer Hunters manga is this huge, epic battle of world-ending proportions, and I mean that literally. It is revealed that Zaha was just a puppet for the real big bad, Lord Charlotte, Big Mama's younger brother. It is he who succeeds in reviving the god of destruction in Carrot's body, a process that absorbs all the magic in the world, and the rest of the Sorcerer Hunters, along with all the heroes they teamed up with throughout their journey, have to take him down before he destroys the world. It is a final battle in its purest form. So how does the anime handle that? So the final battle begins with everyone powered up on a battlefield that looks like a destroyed modern day city, and after giving them a Final Fantasy VIII twist, Zaha immediately kills off every hero besides Carrot. They don't even get a few good hits in. It is a full-blown curb stomp. And they aren't just dead. Big Mama makes it very clear that they are deader than dead, with their souls reincarnated as normal everyday people in our world.
Their spirits may travel, but their memory remains in the flesh. They will go on living in another world, but their time in this place is done.
So the last 2 episodes splits its time between cutting between Chocola and Tira living their life in Tokyo, and Carrot getting his ass beat by Zaha, who is still trying to resurrect the god of destruction. It gets to a point where Big Mama commits suicide and allows herself to be reincarnated into our world, just so she can jog the memory of Tira and Chocola's past lives.
I'm talking about magic as a spiritual force, not a parlor trick. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm speaking of a force that transcends all time and space.
And frankly, it's not as interesting as I am describing it. The slow pace of this anime does not let up even for the last battle, so most of what actually happens just feels like extra padding. But right when it looks like Zaha is about to resurrect the god of destruction, Carrot calls out to his friends, and they are able to hear his voice transcend time and space. This allows them to be resurrected into their world with a huge boost in power, as signified by all their costumes either getting blasted off with energy or becoming more manga accurate. And what happens next? Go ahead. Guess. Guess what happens next. Guess what happens after all that has gone down in the past 3 episodes. They don't even fight Zaha. Not even a single punch. They instead run over to Carrot and give him a big hearty congratulations for not being resurrected into the God of Destruction. Yeah, way to go, Carrot. Thanks for not doing the thing that was completely out of the studio's budget range. But the punchline to all of this is that after all the suffering he has caused, and after attempting to destroy the world so that it may be cleansed in the sea of holy fire, do you know what a presumably newly resurrected Big Mama does to Zaha? She banishes him. She full on lets him go, with the implication that he's learned his lesson and won't do anything bad ever again. What a crock. And the final scene cuts back to modern day Japan, where we see an unseen Carrot hit on a girl. Okay, I'm done with this. I think I've made my point clear here. I guess I can't entirely fault Xebec for this ending. This was one of those endings that was made before the actual manga ended 2 years later, but it's still no excuse for this anime to end on a complete wet fart. Compare this to Slayer's Next, which did a similar concept in its final battle of most of the cast being killed off in an attempt for the villain to get the hero to destroy the world. That's how you end an anime right there, not this complete nothing you see before you. So in the end, I find it really hard to recommend Sorcerer Hunters. It's good if you want that 90s anime feel because it's got plenty of that, and there are some genuinely good standalone stories within the anime itself, but when judging this anime as a whole, it falls short in so many areas. The comedy is too broad, it's tonally indecisive, it moves at a snail's pace near the end, and so much screen time is given to a very annoying protagonist at the expense of his more interesting co-leads. With the anticlimactic ending being the icing on the cake, it definitely makes sense why the fandom for Sorcerer Hunters was unable to sustain itself for very long. You only have so much official media to work with, and the chances for Sorcerer Hunters brotherhood has long since sailed over the horizon. Which is disappointing, really. I wanted to like this anime so bad because it initially looked like another fun romp like Slayer's. But alas, I guess that was just another fantasy.
Oh my daddy, I love you, I love you, and the kid who just stand tonight, tonight.